One of the most misunderstood dynamics in dating is what happens when you finally stop giving. When you stop chasing, stop checking in, stop trying to hold together something that was never mutual. Because in that silence, something powerful begins to shift. The energy changes, the balance corrects itself, and for the first time, the truth starts to reveal itself. When you're the one always showing up, initiating conversations, asking how they are, making sure the connection stays alive, you start to believe that your consistency will earn you loyalty. You think that if you care enough, stay long enough, love hard enough, they'll finally recognize your worth. But every time you show up without them matching your energy, you're teaching them that your love is unconditional even in the absence of respect. You're giving them a sense of security that they haven't earned. And that's where the dynamic quietly dies. Because what they learn is not how valuable you are, but how safe they are to take you for granted. They begin to think, she'll always be there. She'll wait. She'll understand. They assume your patience is endless, but it's not. Because something inside of you eventually reaches its limit. That moment when you stop, genuinely stop, everything changes. You stop texting first. You stop watching their stories. You stop waiting for a message that never comes. And it's not anger. It's not revenge. It's clarity. You've simply realized that silence can sometimes speak louder than any conversation ever could. At first, they don't notice. They move as if nothing's changed. Because for so long, you were the rhythm in the background, the heartbeat of the connection. But days pass, then weeks, and slowly that silence starts to echo. They feel the absence of your energy, the calm where your warmth used to be. That's when confusion begins to set in, because up until now, you were predictable, always available, always caring, always kind, but now there's distance, real distance. Not the kind that manipulates, but the kind that heals. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what this silence does. It forces both of you to see what was hidden. It shows you how much of the relationship was built on your giving, and it shows them how much they were taking. In that quiet space, they begin to question things they never thought about before. Why isn't she texting me? Did I do something wrong? Has she met someone else? It's not love at first. It's ego. Their sense of control has been interrupted. Because for the first time, they can't predict you. They can't read you. And that's where the shift happens, inside you. You start to notice how peaceful your days feel without waiting for their attention. How much lighter you become when you stop overanalyzing every message or wondering if they still care. You begin to remember what it feels like to give energy to yourself. The silence that once scared you becomes your sanctuary. Because you realize you were never afraid of losing them. You were afraid of losing the version of yourself that believed love had to be earned through overgiving. Now you see it clearly. Love should flow in both directions or not at all. He starts to notice too. Maybe he doesn't admit it out loud, but the thought lingers. He checks his phone a little more often. He opens your page just to see what you're doing. He feels a quiet discomfort that he can't name. That's not guilt, it's recognition. Recognition that the balance has changed. You're no longer orbiting him. You're centered in your own world now. And that's what draws him back. Not because you pulled away to manipulate him, but because your absence creates contrast. It makes him confront a truth he ignored for too long, that your presence was never guaranteed. In those moments, he starts replaying the dynamic. He remembers how easily you gave, how consistently you cared, how patient you were even when he didn't deserve it. And slowly the realization begins to dawn. He mistook your softness for permanence. He believed your love would stay no matter how little effort he made. But now something about you has changed. There's a peace he can sense even from a distance. It's not bitterness. It's not indifference. It's self-respect. You've stopped fighting for someone who wasn't meeting you halfway. And that's a kind of beauty that speaks for itself. The irony is, the moment you stop chasing is often the moment they start to see you clearly. Because when you were always there, your presence blended into the background. But the moment you step back, your absence becomes deafening. They finally feel what it's like to miss you. Not just your words or your attention, but your energy, your light, your belief in them. And while they're wrestling with that realization, something else happens inside you. You stop hoping they'll return the energy, and instead, you begin to reinvest it in yourself. You start reading again, creating again, living again. You fill the spaces that once waited for them with purpose. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." That awakening is exactly what this silence gives you. You stop dreaming of potential and start living in truth. He might reach out again, maybe a simple, "Hey," or "How have you been?" A small message designed to test the waters. But something's different now. You're not the same woman who once waited by the phone. You've learned that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. So you pause before replying, not out of strategy, but out of peace. Because you finally understand that the person who truly values you won't need to be reminded of your worth. They'll meet you at your level, not drag you down to theirs. That realization is freedom. You're not chasing love anymore. You're aligning with it. You're no longer trying to convince anyone to choose you. You've already chosen yourself. And that's when the real magic begins. Because when you stop trying to control who stays and who leaves, you make space for what's truly meant for you. You stop forcing connections and start attracting alignment. You stop settling for almost and start preparing for real. The silence that once felt heavy now feels holy, because it's the silence that led you back to yourself. And in that stillness, you discover something unshakable, the kind of strength that doesn't come from holding on, but from knowing when to let go. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And now, you're becoming the version of yourself that no longer begs to be seen. You are seen. You are enough. And that truth no longer depends on who texts you back. He starts to feel it before he can explain it. That quiet unease that creeps in when the person who used to care the most suddenly doesn't chase anymore. It's not dramatic, not loud. It's subtle. Like walking into a room that used to smell familiar but doesn't anymore. Something is missing and he can't quite name it. It's your energy. For so long, your consistency made him comfortable. You were the emotional anchor, the safe harbor he could drift back to whenever the world felt uncertain. He didn't have to give much because you gave enough for both of you. He didn't have to reach out first because you always did. He didn't have to worry about losing you because you never let him feel your absence. Until now. And this is what changes everything. When your messages stop coming, when you stop reacting to his posts, when you stop giving your time and your heart so freely, he doesn't just notice, he feels it. He feels the shift in the air, the void left behind when your warmth no longer circles around him. And that silence starts to challenge him in ways attention never could. At first, his ego reacts. He wonders if you're doing this to make a point, if you're trying to get a reaction out of him. He tells himself you're just being distant, maybe playing games. But as time passes, that story doesn't hold up. Because you're not doing anything. You're simply gone. And that calm indifference is louder than any words could ever be. You've stopped orbiting him. You've reclaimed your gravity. And he can feel that pull shift away from his world and back into yours. What happens next is psychological. He begins to replay everything. He starts to scroll through old messages, not to relive them, but to remember what it felt like when your energy was still his comfort. He reads your words differently now. What he once dismissed as emotional becomes meaningful. What he once took for granted now feels rare. And this is where his confusion deepens. Because now, it's not just his ego that's reacting. It's his memory. He starts to remember the details. The sound of your laugh, the way you said his name, the way your presence made his chaos feel calm. And in that remembrance, regret begins to bloom quietly in the background. But here's what's important. That regret doesn't belong to you. It belongs to him. You're not responsible for fixing it or feeding it, because you've already started healing. You've already stepped into the kind of peace that doesn't need validation. You've begun to understand that love without balance isn't love. It's self-erasure. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's what this silence has given you. the privilege to rediscover who you are when you're not trying to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it. For the first time in a long time, your energy belongs entirely to you. You're not overanalyzing texts. You're not waiting for notifications. You're not trying to decode mixed signals. You're living, breathing, reclaiming your peace. And while he's out there realizing what he's lost, you're out here realizing what you've gained. Freedom. The freedom to move without waiting for permission. The freedom to feel without fear of being too much. The freedom to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your value. He might try to reach out now. A short message, a casual check-in. Something small enough to seem innocent but big enough to test the waters. Hey, how have you been? Saw something that reminded me of you. These are not confessions of love. They're echoes of ego. He's trying to see if the door is still open, if the version of you who used to reply instantly is still there. But that version of you no longer exists. She evolved. She learned that not every message deserves a response, and not every memory deserves to be reopened. Because silence isn't punishment, it's protection. You're protecting your peace, your energy, your emotional clarity. You're no longer chasing closure from people who can't even spell honesty. You've realized that peace isn't something they can give you. It's something you build. When you stop seeking validation from chaos. And here's what's powerful. When you stop giving your energy away freely, people start to treat it differently. They respect what they once took for granted. They see that your presence was never ordinary. It was rare, sacred, and now that it's gone, it's irreplaceable. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." That's what he's doing now. Avoiding the truth that your silence forced him to confront. He's distracting himself, trying to convince himself that he doesn't care, that he can move on easily. But late at night, when the noise fades and the phone is quiet, your absence sits with him. It whispers in the silence. It reminds him of what he dismissed. Meanwhile, your world gets brighter. You start to feel lighter. You begin to realize that your energy was never the problem. It was just misplaced. You were pouring love into someone who didn't know how to hold it. And now, you're learning to pour it back into yourself. You're rediscovering joy in your own company. You're building boundaries that feel like peace, not walls. You're no longer waiting for someone to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. He will notice this version of you, the grounded one, the calm one, the one who no longer seeks closure because she's created it herself. And it will unsettle him. Not because you've changed, but because he can no longer access the woman who loved him so freely. And that's when you'll understand something profound. It was never about making him miss you. It was about remembering yourself. The silence wasn't meant to punish him. It was meant to free you. Because real power doesn't come from what you hold on to. It comes from what you release. You've released the need to be understood by someone who was never listening. You've released the need to prove that your love was enough. You've released the need to chase what's not aligned with your peace. Now your energy feels different, stronger, softer, wiser, and the world begins to reflect that back to you. New people, new experiences, new peace. You attract differently when you love yourself deeply. He may look at you now and think, "She's changed." But the truth is you didn't change. You simply stopped pretending that less was enough. Meanwhile, your world gets brighter. You start to feel lighter. You begin to realize that your energy was never the problem. It was just misplaced. You were pouring love into someone who didn't know how to hold it. And now, you're learning to pour it back into yourself. You're rediscovering joy in your own company. You're building boundaries that feel like peace, not walls. You're no longer waiting for someone to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. He will notice this version of you, the grounded one, the calm one, the one who no longer seeks closure because she's created it herself. And it will unsettle him. Not because you've changed, but because he can no longer access the woman who loved him so freely. And that's when you'll understand something profound. It was never about making him miss you. It was about remembering yourself. The silence wasn't meant to punish him. It was meant to free you. Because real power doesn't come from what you hold on to. It comes from what you release. You've released the need to be understood by someone who was never listening. You've released the need to prove that your love was enough. You've released the need to chase what's not aligned with your peace. Now your energy feels different, stronger, softer, wiser, and the world begins to reflect that back to you. New people, new experiences, new peace. You attract differently when you love yourself deeply. He may look at you now and think, she's changed. But the truth is you didn't change. You simply stopped pretending that less was enough. There's always a moment, quiet but undeniable, when the realization hits him. It's not a dramatic revelation, not some movie scene epiphany. It's smaller, more personal. Maybe he opens his phone and scrolls past your name in the chat list, realizing it's been weeks since your last conversation. Maybe he hears a song that reminds him of you and feels that flicker of something he can't quite describe. Maybe it's a random night, a flash of memory, a passing scent that brings your presence back to life in his mind. And suddenly he feels it, that subtle ache, the awareness that you are no longer there. It's strange for him because he never thought he'd miss you. He thought he was in control. He thought he could come and go as he pleased and you'd always be waiting. But now he feels the weight of your absence and it's heavier than he expected. What once felt certain now feels uncertain. What once felt safe now feels lost. He tries to rationalize it. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you're moving on. Maybe it doesn't matter. But deep down it does. Because for the first time, he's not sure if he can reach you anymore. Not just with a message, but emotionally. That invisible cord between you has been cut, and he doesn't know how to tie it back. This is where the ego starts to crumble and the heart begins to stir. He remembers your laughter, the sound of your voice, the comfort of your presence. But he's not just missing a person. He's missing a feeling. The way you made him feel seen, the way you believed in him, the way you never made him beg for affection because you gave it freely. And now that it's gone, he realizes how rare that was. Meanwhile, you're no longer standing still. You're not waiting for him to notice. You're not living in pause. You're living in progress. The version of you that once anxiously checked. Your phone has been replaced by a woman grounded in her peace. The one who used to overthink every interaction now trusts her intuition. The one who used to give endlessly now gives intentionally. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's what you've done. Accepted yourself fully. The good, the messy, the sensitive, the strong. You've stopped trying to be the perfect partner for someone else and started becoming the whole version of yourself. You're no longer chasing love. You're embodying it. He notices. Oh, he notices. Even if he doesn't say a word, he feels the difference. There's a glow to you now that isn't about makeup or fashion. It's the glow of alignment, of finally living in truth. You're not performing for anyone anymore. You're simply being. And that energy? It's magnetic. Not the desperate kind that tries to pull someone in, but the calm, self-assured kind that makes people stop and look twice. Because peace has a presence, confidence has a frequency. And when a woman walks in her worth, the world feels it, including the one who once took her for granted. He might reach out again, this time a little differently, maybe with a touch of vulnerability. I've been thinking about you. I miss the way things used to be. And for a moment, it might make your heart flicker, because you remember too. You remember the good moments, the laughter, the connection. But now you see it clearly. You don't miss him. You miss the version of yourself that believed love could fix what only growth could. That's when your strength quietly reveals itself. You don't respond out of habit anymore. You don't fall for breadcrumbs dressed as closure. You know the difference between nostalgia and compatibility. You've learned that missing someone doesn't mean you should go back to them, because what you've built in his absence is too valuable to trade for temporary comfort. You've built peace. You've built purpose. You've built boundaries that don't suffocate love but protect it. He might try harder now. He might send long messages, call late at night, try to bring up the past. But you can feel it. His intentions are still uncertain. He wants to feel close to you again, but not necessarily commit to the growth required to stay. And that's when you realize something life-changing. You no longer need him to understand your worth for it to exist. Your self-respect no longer depends on his recognition. You've already validated yourself. You've already given yourself the love you once begged for. That realization is liberation. It's not bitterness. It's clarity. It's not pride. It's peace. Because now you know that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. It showed you who cared enough to reach out and who was comfortable watching you fade away. It showed you who valued your presence and who only noticed your absence. Carl Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." That's the truth of your story. The connection changed you both, but only one of you used that transformation to evolve. You became better, stronger, softer in the right places and firm in the right boundaries. He, on the other hand, is still wrestling with the old version of the story, the one where he was the center and you were the giver. But that story no longer fits reality, because you've outgrown it. You've become the woman who understands her silence is sacred, who knows her energy is her currency, who no longer pours into empty cups or waits for half-hearted love. You've stopped asking for closure from others and started creating it within yourself. And that's the most powerful shift of all. You're not waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. You've learned that real love will never require you to shrink, to chase, or to beg. It will meet you where you are, not drag you backwards into what you've already healed from. He might never fully understand that. He might keep circling back, testing, hoping to find the version of you that no longer exists. But when he does, he'll discover what every man eventually learns too late. That when a woman truly heals, she doesn't come back as proof of forgiveness. She moves forward as evidence of evolution. That's why you feel lighter now. That's why you smile differently. That's why the silence no longer feels lonely, because you've filled it with something deeper. Self-respect, gratitude, faith, the things that last longer than temporary affection ever could. And when he looks at you now, whether through a screen or across a room, he doesn't just see the woman he lost. He sees the woman he never really knew. Before he even decides to reach out again, before he sends that small, hesitant message that reads, "Hey, I've been thinking about you," something begins to happen inside him. Something deeper than longing, something closer to reckoning. He begins rewriting the story, not consciously at first. It's subtle. It starts with a single memory that resurfaces when he least expects it. Maybe it's a smell, a song, a place you once went together. Suddenly, you're not just someone he used to know. You're the feeling he can't quite recreate with anyone else. But what he's holding on to isn't you anymore. It's a memory, a reflection of who you were when you still believed that love could be sustained by one person's effort. In his mind, that version of you still exists. The one who cared deeply, reached out first, forgave quickly. The one who never made him earn her softness. But that woman doesn't live here anymore. She grew, she healed, she transformed. He doesn't realize that yet. In his head, he's missing something familiar, not realizing that the person he's missing evolved far beyond the story. He's still telling himself. That's why when he reaches out, it feels strange. His words sound familiar, but his timing feels foreign, because now he's no longer in control of how this plays out. You are. When he sends that message, you don't feel the rush you once did. You don't feel your heartbeat jump or your mind race. You feel calm, grounded. You read the words and realize they don't hold the same weight anymore. They're echoes from a chapter you've already closed. That's when you truly understand what growth feels like. It's not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of peace. You don't hate him. You don't resent him. You simply no longer need what he can't give. You've learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means accepting that the lesson is over. Carl Jung said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." That's the key. You've accepted what happened, not as a wound, but as wisdom. You've accepted that love without reciprocity drains you. That consistency without commitment breaks you. That hope without effort exhausts you. You've accepted that silence was never punishment. It was preparation. It made you stronger, softer, more self-aware. And now when he says, "I miss you," you hear it differently. You understand that what he misses isn't you. It's how you made him feel. You were safety. You were understanding. You were the mirror that made him feel enough. And now that you're gone, he feels the emptiness that was always there, the one your love once covered. He might try to act casual, pretending he just wants to catch up. He might say things like, "It would be nice to see you." But you can sense it. The nostalgia, the longing, the confusion. He's trying to bridge the gap between who you were and who you've become. But the truth is, that bridge no longer exists. You've outgrown the version of love that needed your suffering to survive. You've stopped confusing intensity with intimacy. You've learned that being chosen late isn't the same as being valued early. You now understand that love without effort is just comfort disguised as connection. And so you let him talk. Maybe you reply politely, maybe you don't reply at all. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Because the woman he's reaching for no longer fits the place he left her in. You're no longer seeking validation from someone who once broke your peace. You're protecting the calm you worked so hard to build. That's when he begins to spiral. Not dramatically, but internally. Because when he sees you now, through your confidence, your silence, your peace, he realizes something painful yet true. You didn't just move on. You elevated. You're not playing hard to get. You've become hard to forget. He remembers how easy it used to be. One message, one smile, and he had your attention again. But now, you're not waiting for his breadcrumbs. You're dining with your boundaries. You're no longer addicted to potential. You're loyal to your peace. There's a moment, a quiet one, where he understands what he truly lost. Not just your presence, but the version of himself that existed when you loved him. Because you saw him at his highest and lowest, and you still stayed. But now that reflection is gone. He's left facing his own emptiness, without the comfort of your love to soften it. Meanwhile, you've stepped into something higher, something whole. You've realized that love doesn't have to hurt, doesn't have to beg, doesn't have to chase. It can be peaceful. It can be mutual. It can be honest. You're no longer chasing intensity. You're choosing alignment. The silence that once felt like an ending was actually a beginning. The ending of overgiving. The ending of self-abandonment. The ending of begging to be seen. And the beginning of everything you were meant to be. You no longer need to prove your worth by being chosen. You prove it by choosing yourself. You no longer need someone to validate your love. You validate it by giving it to the right places. Places that give back. Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And you've lived that truth. The pain you felt when you stopped chasing was not punishment. It was rebirth. It stripped away illusion. It burned through attachment. It turned longing into learning. And now you stand as someone new. Not harder, not colder, just wiser. You've learned the art of detachment. Not from love, but from chaos. You've learned to love without losing yourself. You've learned to care deeply without being consumed. You've learned to walk away not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself more. He may come back once more. He may try to convince you that things could be different this time. But deep down you'll know. You'll look at him and realize that the chapter is over. That the version of you who needed him no longer exists. You might smile. You might wish him well. But you'll walk away. Not out of anger, but acceptance. Because you now understand that sometimes the most powerful closure is no conversation at all. It's simply the peace that comes from knowing you gave it your all, and it was enough. The silence taught you more than words ever could. It showed you who you are without the noise. It reminded you that your energy is sacred, that your love is a gift, that your presence is power. And maybe one day he'll truly understand it. Maybe he'll see that losing you wasn't punishment, it was a lesson. A lesson in timing, in effort, in value. But by then you'll already be gone, living in the peace that only self-love can give. Because when a woman truly finds herself, she becomes untouchable. Not because no one can reach her, but because no one can shake her. She walks with quiet confidence, with the kind of grace that doesn't demand attention but commands respect. That's you now. No longer chasing, no longer proving, no longer waiting to be seen. You are seen. You are whole. You are free. And as Carl Jung said, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. You accepted the truth. You let it transform you. And in that transformation, you became something unstoppable. The woman who doesn't just survive heartbreak, but rises from it radiant. Your silence spoke, and the world, including him, finally listened.